And it was around about the same time, as you'll know, that the nations of the world gathered to make a contract and a covenant with the poor. The Millennium Declaration, which holds up some very high aspirations for our combined humanity. The Millennium Development Goals, which said, we will anchor the Millennium Declaration in 8 promises, which is a contract we have with the poor, by which, by the year 2015, we will reduce extreme poverty by 50% through these 8 discrete promises. And when those promises were made, the truth of the matter is that many people were rather skeptical, rather cynical. How long is a piece of string? And each of these 8 promises has the potential of being as long as you want it to be, as vague, some people would have said, as you needed it to be. But some of us felt, no, if for the first time governments have actually contracted to do this, what should a Christian response be? Should we turn our backs? Should we pray for it, against it? For it if you're kind of left of center as a Christian, against it if you're right of center and you feel like the United Nations is demonic. What do we do? Should we turn up to government and consistently tell them how bad they are if they fail? Or should we be prophetic in our response? The Micah challenge is called that because it was the child of 2 parent bodies. Because at the same time, Christians from around the world were collaborating in how they worked as Christian NGOs on issues of poverty alleviation around the world. And Micah Network was birthed at the dawn of this millennium. At the same time, the World Evangelical Alliance, a coalition, if you like, a family of some 127 countries, 420 million people around the world, was also gathering as a body of evangelical Christians increasingly committed to ensure that our faith counted on behalf of those who are marginalized, on behalf of the poor. These 2 bodies, the Micah Network and the World Evangelical Alliance, came together and gave birth to Micah Challenge. Here's what Micah Challenge is. Micah Challenge is therefore a global Christian response to the Millennium Development Goals, by which we aim to firstly deepen our commitment to the poor, and secondly, to advocate for and with the poor, holding governments to account. We were amazed when in October 2004, on a shoestring of a budget, we were able to launch Micah Challenge at the United Nations. 4 years later, Micah Challenge is now present in 40 different nations of the world. Some of them are strong, a small amount. Most of them have incredible potential. But here's what we want to do with Micah Challenge. First of all, we want to work to ask some very profound questions of ourselves. What does it mean to deepen our commitment to the poor? What does it mean to begin to realign the Christian church so that it lines itself up with God's heart, God's passion for the poor? What does it mean to understand together the challenge of Isaiah? If you pour out your soul to the poor, then your light will shine forth. What does it mean to have a church which resonates with Paul's declaration in Galatians chapter 2? I met with the apostles in Jerusalem. They gave me the right hand of fellowship. They said they would lay no further burden on me except one thing, that I remember the poor. I was going to do that anyway, said Paul. What does it mean for a church? So prioritize the poor in our polity, in our budget, in our attitudes, even in our culture, in such a way that our response to the poor, our response to the disadvantaged, our response to the marginalized becomes something more than an equal concern for who does the flower arrangements or who is or is not on the choir. How do you prioritize God's passion so that we signally deepen our commitment to the poor, so that there is integrity in our lobbying? And Micah's second aim is to be a prophetic voice to politicians. I was really, really privileged to be in Canberra this week with Micah Challenge's Voices for Justice here in Australia. Just a fantastic week. I sat with a number of young people as we lobbied and Member of Parliament on the Hill. What was great about sitting with these four youngsters as they sort of pulled out their stats, sat before the Member of Parliament and said, well, now, we are coming to you, sir, because we're so grateful for your government, for all that you have done to put the MDGs high on the agenda, for the fact that you have significantly ratcheted up your commitment from wherever it was, 3 point something was it, to a 5% commitment by 2015. We think that's really great, but actually, we're really wanting to tell you that we still think it should be 0.7%, not 0.5% of our GNI. That's what we're aiming for. We think that whilst we're doing a great job, and there's some great stories to be told about what we're doing as a nation in the world, so we think that really we do need to consider that by 2015 we are giving $1 billion in aid, because that is our contribution to a world in need. And that billion in aid will make a substantial difference to lowering the number of maternity deaths, will actually do a tremendous amount to lower infant mortality, both here in the South Pacific, but also in other parts of the world. So thank you for what you're doing, but we really want to encourage you to press on. Now let me tell you why that was so fascinating to me. It was because 3 days before, these same youngsters were in church, in worship, listening to preaching, worshipping God. And just a couple of days later, these worshippers were translating their commitment to God in the context of policy asks. A politician they were talking to knew that they were first-timers. It was gentle, it was nurturing, because actually what was happening was a lot more than Micah challenge, putting some kids in front of a Member of Parliament. What was happening was Micah challenging, encouraging Christians to behave like Christian citizens. That's precisely a part of our Christian obligation, to be more than pietists behind closed doors, but to be active Christian citizens in the public square. That was the transaction taking place before my very eyes. What was happening was Micah challenging, nurturing the democratic process through young people who will hopefully take their Christian commitment, holistic, integrated response to the world, from worship to policy application. And I think what we have, therefore, as we look into the future and peak in the years ahead, is to recognize that there are some very serious challenges. We had the opportunity of talking to all kinds of interesting individuals over the last couple of days as we worked on the Hill, as it were. And we know that there are very difficult and pressing problems and challenges facing us as a result of the global economic crunch. Here is a bigger challenge, perhaps. How do we ensure that as a community of faith, we sustain our prophetic role in ensuring that the moral imperative of caring for the vulnerable, of being a part of a global humanity, doesn't get diverted or dissipated by economic realities which are domestic? How do we ensure that our global humanity continues to eclipse our domestic humanity, so that the church plays a vibrant prophetic role in saying to a prime minister, in saying to a treasurer, yeah, we've got some real challenges here, we've done well, but we still think that the Lord has told us what to do. It is still to do justice, to love mercy, to walk humbly with God. And that walk of humility with God is always going to be best understood, perhaps, as we walk humbly with God, with the poor. 2015 is a policy deadline. It's a clear objective. But even beyond that, we think that what God calls us to is that constant, timeless commitment to deepen our response to the poor. But I think I'll stop there. It may be that folks might have any questions for us. I'd be more than happy to let somebody else answer.